Good day, my name is Melbourne Tony from Group 2. Our group consists of 5 members, which are Grace Wong, myself, Michelle Lee, Tan Lee Yong, and Yu Zipong. The topic that we will present is the Zodiac Killer. Okay, for the timeline, the first attack was on the night of 20 December 1968, where David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were shot to death in a secluded area on Lake Herman, California. The motive of the crime and the identity of the suspect was unknown to the police. And then the second attack involved Darlene Ferrin and her boyfriend Mike Megau, where they were attacked by a guy using a flashlight and then opened fire on them multiple times. This attack occurred on 5 July 1969. Megau was seriously injured, and after the attack, a guy contacted the police department and claimed for responsibility for both of the murder case in 1968 and 1969 on 5 July. And then the third attack was when the killer approached Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell, who were relaxing on the edge of Lake Berrycia in Napa County on September 27, 1969. They were tied up and savagely stabbed, and Shepard died soon after due to her wounds. And then the fourth attack was on 11 October 1969, where a cab driver, Paul Stein, was killed by the Zodiac Killer by open fire. And then at the present, the Zodiac Killer remained a mystery until now. That's all from me, and I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Good morning to Dr. Afiq and Dr. Ashraf. I am Michelle. Now I would like to present on the physical evidence that found in Zodiac Killer's crime scenes. So here is a list of the physical evidence that found. So first we will talk on the weapon and ballistic fingerprint left in the crime scene. So in this case, for example, like in 20 December 1968, Betty and Davis was killed by using a gun. So we can get the information of the gun by collecting the bullets that hit on the cars and the victim. Besides that, we can also know what possible activity happens on that day by recognize the positions where the gun is fired. So when we know where is the gun is fired, so we can indicate how the bullets hits the victim and also the car. So to collect the data, we're using the split screen microscope to check the microscopic marks on the bullet. Next is the shoe prints at the Lake Berryessa. So in 27 September 1969, at this crime scene, it was found a suspect shoe prints by the Zodiac Killer. So with these shoe prints, we can indicate what activity is being done on the crime scene. We can able to observe how many suspects that come out in the crime scene, and also is useful to understand the walking patterns of the suspect. So to do the methods to collect the data, we're using the casting methods to collect the 3D impressions of the footprint. Next is the tire print at the Lake Berryessa. So beside of the footprints, the tire print is also left at the crime scene. So this type of tire prints is used to determine the type of the tire as well as the car manufacturers and the model of the car. The direction of the travelers come from a crime scene also can be identified from the tire prints. So to collect the data, the tread impressions, the width, the length, the depth of the tire was recorded and used to compare with the pictures of the tire results. Next is the bloody fingerprints at the victim cab. So at 11 October 1969, the victim is killed by the Zodiac killers and a possible bloody fingerprints was found. So as we know that everyone have their unique fingerprints. So this fingerprint is very useful to identify and compare it with the suspect through the minutia in the ridge. So the method used is by asthe, which is analysis, comparison, evaluations, and verifications. Next is the envelope containing pulse stations. So the Zodiac killers not just kill the person, he cut a small piece of the shirt, and this shirt is used to prove that he is the killer. Okay. So in the envelopes, we found a reddish brown hair behind the stamp. So actually, the trace evidence is useful to determine the DNA of the suspect. As we know that DNA is a very significant and solid evidence that we can use in the court. However, in this case, the small, tiny reddish brown hair is insufficient to do the identifications of the DNA, especially we need a hair shaft to detect the nuclear DNA. The follicle hair is not enough. So that's all from me. Thank you.
The next evidence is the first letter from Zodiac Killer, which was 408 symbol cryptogram. In this letter contained his identification, and he divided into 3 parts and sent to 3 different newspaper publishers. Therefore, handwriter or printer analysis needed to conduct to identify either it was handwriter or printed document. If it was handwriter source, analysis conducted to compare the individualities, characteristics, and habits such as word spacing, size, and word length. If it was printed source, microscopic analysis is conducted by investigating the characteristic of the printing device used. After that, instrumental analysis is conducted to examine the chemical composition of the printing in use. To prove the identification, the police requested him to send another letter. After a few days, a newspaper publisher received a letter with the title of "Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." He provided the important details that police didn't state in public. In this case, handwriter analysis needed to be conducted. Besides that, the police could search again the crime scene for finding the missing information that provided by Zodiac Killer. The next evidence is the card written by Cecilia and Brian where the killer snatched from them. After he killed them, he used a backfield pen to write the information at the car's door, such as the cross-circle symbol and the details of the crime scene that link to the crime scenes before. Capillary electrophoresis can be used to identify the specificity of the backfield pen and its origin, and the handwriting analysis could be conducted. After Zodiac Killer killed Cecilia and Brian, he reported to the police station by using a pair public telephone that 27 miles from the crime scene. But when the police reached there, they only found a steel wet palm print, and they found that the fingerprint didn't match any suspect from the list when fingerprint comparison was conducted. The wet palm can be preserved well and used for comparison when another suspect's fingerprint is found by conducting asthe method for fingerprint comparison. The last evidence is saliva sample from stamp of postcard that might belong to Zodiac Killer. This could help to obtain a large area of DNA profile of Zodiac Killer. A prime suspect, Alan, was excluded when DNA comparison was conducted. DNA analysis could be carried out to find the related suspect that fulfills DNA left on the postcard.
Now I'm going to present about the analysis method that can be used to analyze the physical evidence that found at the crime scene. In this case, the first physical evidence will be the fingerprint. We use analysis, comparison, evaluation, and verification method for examining the fingerprint. Firstly, we analyze a recovered print and determine whether it is good enough condition to be used for comparison. Then, this good enough condition of fingerprint will be used to compare with the suspect print. Examining two prints side by side, tiny characteristic, also known as minutia, to evaluate these two prints are coming from the same person or different person. Once a decision is made, another examiner independently goes through the entire process to verify the original examiner result. Shoe print identification process involves documentation, collection, and analysis. For documentation, the shoestring will be photographed and sketches. For collection, raster case will be used to collect the shoestring. For analysis, the shoestring will be measured. In this case, the shoe size was 10.5, and they found that the shoestring was very deep as soon as the killer was very heavy, and there is a little circle appear between the heel and the sole. And after investigation, they found that this marking is belong to a type of military push called wing worker. Tire ring have the similar identification process with the shoestring. For documentation, photograph and sketches, collection, raster case to collect the tire ring. For analysis, record and measure the wide length, depth of tire and direction of travel, as well as the tread wide and the heel base of the tree to narrow down the search. In this case, the investigator only measure the tread wide. They need to measure the other thing. The tread wide is measured about 57 inch. So later, basically we can analyze the killer handwriting style based on this zodiac later, because every person have their own handwriting style. The handwriting analyst will look at the difference to determine whether these two documents is wrote by same person or different person, based on three things, which are letter form, line form, and formatting. Pouching shirt, because this shirt contain some DNA ingredient, so we can use DNA profiling to identify individuals, to identify the killer from the suspect based on their unique genetic makeup. Weapon and ballistic fingerprint in crime scene. Basically, in fact, the ballistic fingerprint is a unique pattern of marking left by a specific firearm on ammunition discharge. So how they analyze? The investigator can match the bullet from the victim to the suspect gun. Forensic examiner first test fire a suspect gun, then compare the mark on the crime scene bullet to mark on the test fire bullet in order to assess the similarity between these two sets of marks and determine whether the bullet is fired from the same gun or different gun. The similarity or differences on the mark of the bullet can be observed by using a slit screen microscope, also known as comparison microscope. The next physical ingredient will be stain containing saliva and reddish brown hair. We can conduct DNA testing, but however, in this case, reddish brown hair is insufficient for DNA testing because it only provides partial genetic profile. But we can use this to excuse the suspect based on this partial genetic profile. And the last physical ingredient will be the car driven by Cecilia and Brian, because the killer had thrown some messages on this car, and based on the local exchange principle, when someone comes into contact with an object or another person, a code transfer physical ingredient will be occurred. Thus, we can conduct the handwriting analysis and fingerprint by using asthe method for this ingredient.
Next, I'm going to present on how was the physical evidence found related to the suspect. Firstly, there was a shoe print found at Lake Berryessa on 27 September of 1969. After investigation, the size of the shoe print was 10.5. At that time, Alan, which is the suspect of the case, wore shoe of size 10.5 too. The next physical evidence was the zodiac sign found on the victim's car, chippers, and on the letters Sam. It was a circle with a cross sign at the middle. The Zodiac Killer always used the same symbol in his letter to prove that it was him who writing the letter. Alan's mother, Bernice, gave Alan a Zodiac watch as a gift. There is a Zodiac sign on the watch. According to Alan's brother, Ron, the watch was received in December of 1967. The type of weapons and ammunition found at the crime scene has been listed as in the figure. In 1991, the search warrant executed by BPD revealed Alan owned the same type of ammunition used to kill the victims of Zodiacs at Lake Herman Road attack. Police has investigated one of the type confession letter most probably sent by the Zodiac Killer. It was found that the typewriter used to type the letter was Royal model with either Elite or Pica type. During the execution of a 1991 search warrant, BPD seized a Royal typewriter with Elite type from the home of Alan. Last, the evidence that can link the murder case to the suspect was testimony. In 1991, surviving victim identified Alan as the man who shot him in a police lineup. Surviving victim Brian Hartnell identified his voice and physical appearance as being similar to the Zodiac. After Alan's friend, Cheney mentioned to Ron Allen, which is Alan's brother, that Alan had 2.22 caliber weapons. Even though there are evidence that shown Alan was the possible Zodiac killer, the investigator or forensic scientist as a professional should not simply conclude that Alan was the killer before there is an exact evidence that can prove the hypothesis, as there are still questionable points that are unsolved.
Next, I will discuss about the discussion and the suggestion. For the first point, it will be better when police record down and use a voice recorder to record the details. This is because one of the possible victims in 1970, Catherine Jones, stated that when she was telling the police about the details of the case and the crime scene, the police didn't do any documentation, even recorded down about the details. She believed that they just relied on their memory when they were preparing the reports. The second point is, in this case, the police measured the thread width, but they didn't measure the wheelbase. In fact, they should measure the wheelbase that will help to obtain more information about the case. Next point is about the proper training should be provided for evidence collection, preservative, and analysis. This is because in 2007, Dennis Kaufman provided a hot that contained bloodstain scenes like related to his stepfather, Jack Terrence. After conducting the analysis, they claimed that the DNA from the hot matched the DNA from the trace bloodstain they left in the crime scene. But after a few years, this claim was inconclusive and rejected because they claimed that the incorrect way of DNA preservative and bloodstain analysis were conducted at that time. Another mistake found was miscommunication and misunderstood between the police. There were 3 eyewitnesses reported to the police and stated that the Zodiac Killer was a white-skinned man in Palestine's crime scene, but the police dispatcher described that he was a black-skinned man. But after the collection, they just realized that they missed the highly suspicious white-skinned man who just passed through them. As conclusion, although there was a lot of evidence but it's still unsolved, maybe it's because of the poor technology had been used, or maybe it's because of the high intelligence quotient of murder that prevent to left the important evidence that will reveal his identification. So this might cause by over publicity of the information. So that's all from our presentation. Thank you.